Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for Heavy Sports and the Game Plan, and I'm happy to be joined by my guest today who's going to be talking about an exciting anniversary event coming up for a Real American Freestyle. He is Eric Bischoff. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing very well, Giancarlo. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
And Eric, this is an exciting time there for RAF. RAF 12 is going to celebrate 1 year since the first event there, going back to the roots there in Cleveland. Just how can you best describe like just this first year being involved with RAF?
Surreal would be the best word overall. Surreal, meaning there's no way, and we spoke about this just a few minutes before we went live. There's no way, if anybody would have come to me and said, oh, wow, you're about to go on an amazing ride, and here's what's going to happen over the next 12 months. I would have been very entertained by it, and I would have been somewhat flattered that someone would think that that's even possible. But deep down inside, I would have been laughing because it would have been absurd to think that a startup sports league would be able to go from a thought in March, maybe April, a serious conversation, at least in April, to a 12-month anniversary where we've already had our first international event in Tbilisi, Georgia. We are a major tentpole property for Fox Nation. Our TV relationship has expanded 2 or 3 times already in the course of 12 months and expanded in a very positive way. Oh, and we're going to produce our first reality show special in that first year. And we're going to announce that we're going to Moscow in just a little over that first year. So if somebody would have come to me and said, this is where you're going to be at, I would have just, like I said, I would have been flattered that they think it's even possible, but I would have laughed.
And what were those like preliminary discussions when this was a thought? Because I know like a lot of fans, they saw the videos there, those NWO vignettes with you and the late Hulk Hogan and Izzy Martinez. Then we find out Chad Bronstein is like involved as well. So like, what were those initial conversations like, and how was like the original idea maybe different for what ended up happening?
Here's what's interesting is I've learned a lot, working with the team now for the past 12 months that I didn't know when I agreed to join the team. For example, and I really think it's important because it's also perhaps makes it a little easier to understand why we've been able to do as well as we have in such a short period of time. Because we really have the 3 tentpoles to what it takes when something has an opportunity to grow as fast as Real American Freestyle did. We just have to happen to have an abundance of it. It's a blessing. From my perspective, it's a gift. Chad was the original vision. He had the inspiration. It was the original spark that created the flame that became Real American Freestyle as a brand and a company. Started with Chad wanting his son to find a good trainer. And they did it. And Chad found Izzy. And Chad decided he wanted to build something because he's a serial entrepreneur. He's been an entrepreneur probably all of his adult life in one way, shape, or form. It's just he has a terminal state of it at this point. He is one of the most intense people I've ever worked with. And he loves building things. And he decided he wanted to build something for his son, an opportunity to extend or expand upon his son's opportunities in the world of amateur wrestling. Because Chad, as a former wrestler, really understood the characteristics, the qualities, the discipline, all of the things that make amateur wrestlers so unique as athletes. Because you have to be wired a little differently to be good at this particular sport. And Chad wanted to build that platform and opportunity for his son. So and this is before I came in. Chad and I think I would imagine Izzy. I haven't even had an opportunity to dig into this much, but based on what I've heard, kind of anecdotally, Chad and Izzy were starting to think about an NIL type tournament type approach, right? Maybe a little more along the lines of what we see in, for example, a flow event where you have multiple mats going and some TV cameras, and yes, you can watch it online, but whatever. That was the first, I think, iteration of the idea. Then Chad explained at some point in that process early on, Chad, who had been working with Hulk Hogan on the Real American Beer brand and touring all over the United States and exposing this brand to, Hulk's fan base and all that. Hulk and Chad were partners in that initiative. I was not involved in it. I knew of it because I was in touch with Hulk. He was one of my closest friends for the last 25, 30 years. So I was aware of the beer brand and what Hulk was doing with it, but I didn't really know much about Chad. It never came up. So at one point back in probably January, February of 25, Hulk called me. No big deal. We spoke usually once or twice a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, but average once or twice a week. And he said, brother, I could tell he was serious because he gets into his brother. I can almost picture him stroking his Fu Manchu, brother. You got to get down here, brother. I want to introduce you to my partner, Chad Braunstein. He's got an idea for this amateur wrestling league and taking it pro. And Alex said to me, Eric, I think you're perfect for this, meaning the television production side of it, because that was my relationship with Hulk. That's how Hulk knew me. So I flew down to Tampa and met with Hulk and met with Chad. And Hulk had already explained what they were thinking. In fact, I think we maybe had one or two telephone calls before I flew down with Chad as well. So I had a general idea of what Chad's goal was and a general idea of what the vision was. Hulk kind of put it into more of a sports entertainment perspective for me. So I was getting the amateur wrestling side of it from Chad. I was getting the entertainment side of it and potential from Hulk. And I used to wrestle in high school and a couple of years after high school, freestyle Greco and Roman and stuff. So I had, it was a long time ago, but I had a little bit of a sense of what the opportunity could be. And then listening to Chad and Hulk, I thought, what the heck? Why not? I loved working with Hulk. We've been looking for an opportunity for years. We had worked together many times in the past. I liked Chad when I first met him, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. I just said, sure, I'll jump in. Let's do it. And here we are. That's how it came about.
And it's great too, because you see like everything, it's like worlds blending together, like the sports entertainment aspect of it, the collegiate wrestling aspect of it. And now with the production side, like you're coming in from pro wrestling with your experience in WCW and WWE and telling stories. So was there something that you took from that and maybe altered a little bit when telling the stories of some of these RAF athletes who maybe didn't showcase their personality as much as others may have hoped, like in other sports?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we'll talk about that. But the one thing I want to finish up on, which actually is a good point to start here, is that what makes RAF so special, and I think what helps explain, beyond the fact that it's a blessing, what helps explain why we've had so much success is, I spoke a lot about Chad just now, but Chad brings a very unique and high-level an instinct and an understanding of how to scale from a business perspective, dealing with investors, dealing with sponsors, monetizing every opportunity that launching a sports league can provide. If you look at what we've done in that category in a short period of time, it is beyond impressive, right? Chad has unique skill sets across the board as an entrepreneur, and including finding the funding to launch this thing, because you can tell by looking at it, it is not cheap to produce. You've seen some of the, reported paydays. Most of them are, exaggerations, but they're in the zip code sometimes. So, it's a very expensive investment, and to find the right financial backers that were willing to not only take the risk but stick it out and invest so much so soon, that's rare. And that's so much of what Chad brings to the table. Now, let's talk about the other tentpole, Israel Martinez. Izzy, I've never met anybody as passionate. No, I'll take that back. I've had a chance to meet Dan Gable and Kyle Snyder and some other really high-level athletes, but I don't think any of them are more passionate about wrestling than Israel Martinez. And you look at the credibility, just the pedigree, if you will, of Israel Martinez and his relationships from kids through his wrestling clubs and his participation in those events, to high school coaches, to students that he's coached, and he's probably put more people through college because of his wrestling training and coaching skills than maybe just about anybody that you could speak to, or certainly anybody that I know personally. There's nobody close, right? You look at the respect that Israel Martinez has and the relationships. It's important to talk about the relationships because of all this credibility, the relationships that Israel Martinez brings from the world of competitive amateur wrestling at the highest levels, including the professionals in the UFC, like John Jones, who Israel Martinez has trained and coached. So you take Chad's gifts, you combine them with Israel Martinez's gifts, and then you look at what I'm able to contribute based on my experience in sports entertainment, because sports entertainment is all about, it doesn't really apply to what I used to call professional wrestling, my previous professional wrestling career. That it's all entertainment. You're creating emotion. You're creating characters. Now it's it's all fiction, right? But the technique that is used to many of the techniques used to help create this entertaining sports entertainment kind of format apply to what we're doing. Now you have to reinterpret them. You have to look at those elements that work over on the left side of the equation, which is the WWE side, so to speak, or in my case, when I was running at WCW, you look at those tools, those elements, those techniques, right? And you decide how many and how you can apply them over here, where the stories are real and the characters are real. Many of those techniques and elements, some of them have to be modified. You have to adjust them because now we're dealing with reality and we're not dealing with fiction, right? That was the art, if you will, that goes into what I do, is based on experience, knowing how to, and what of those elements can work, how to employ them or deploy them is a better way to say it, and then how to coach talent to adjust to it. And when I say talent, I don't mean just the wrestlers, but everybody that you see on camera, and particularly behind the camera, because the heart and soul of Real American Freestyle Television is the format. It's the recipe. It's no different than baking a really, really good exotic dinner. The dinner is the ultimate prize, the ultimate product, if you will, but the recipe and the artful application of it is what makes it special. And that's what makes our format special, is we have one of the best production teams, core teams, in my opinion, in the world, other than perhaps WWE. They got everybody beat, in my opinion. We're right there behind them when it comes to making something that can be incredibly bone dry, like amateur wrestling can be. It's why it's never been what it is today because of Real American Freestyle, because nobody's ever made it entertaining to watch. They've always covered it. They've always presented it. ESPN does a great job with the NCAAs. It comes around once a year. And then wrestling's off everybody's radar. You have amateur events like the US Open. Yeah, they're out there, but you got to look for them, right? Nobody's ever made it entertaining. We've taken those elements that I've worked with for 30 some odd years, and some of which I've created, by the way, we're applying those elements to one of the greatest sports in the history of sports, certainly one of the oldest sports in the history of sports. And we're applying those elements in a way that nobody else has ever attempted or, frankly, knows how. So you take Chad's gifts, Izzy's gifts, my experience, put them in a box, shake it up, and 12 months later, you got one hell of an anniversary at Real American Freestyle 12 in Cleveland, Ohio. And shortly thereafter, we're heading to Moscow.
And like all this expansion too, like the Georgia event where we saw Merab pull off that massive upset, beating Henry Cejudo, who has an Olympic gold medal, and they're having that rematch here at the anniversary event. Are these some of the upsets that, you know, make this sport maybe so appealing to others, like a casual viewer, to tune in, where you could have an Olympic gold medalist lose to a UFC star coming over who, even though he has a wrestling background, doesn't have the Olympic level background, and maybe this rematch ends up being even bigger than what they had in Georgia?
This is the exciting part for me. You know, we were talking about storylines in my previous career, right? And that's, you know, I was known for a couple things, and not, believe me, not everything I was known for was great. I was known for some really not so great things too. But, you know, can not so humbly say a lot of the good ideas changed the industry completely. And for me, what's so much fun is not me being able to create a storyline that I can figure out a way for an RAF wrestler to get involved in, because that's not how this works. That's not how real sport works, or the athletes in it. But when you've got a situation like we have with Merab, right, and Henry, that story is writing itself. Merab's journey should be a movie, just based on what we saw in Georgia, in Tbilisi at RAF, right? What a phenomenal story. Henry's gold medalist, defeated by a UFC guy, an MMA star. That's wow. Now there's stakes, because in any good story, it doesn't matter what the act 1 is. It doesn't even matter what act 2 is. If there's no stakes, there's no reason to have an act 2. But when you've got a real life story with real life stakes, like we have right now, it's magic. And now the challenge, and it's the one I love the most, is how do we take this reality and bring it to the audience in a way that makes it compelling? And we do that with, you know, not just interviews, but really, really, really artful interviews that helps advance the story and helps illustrate the emotion that's associated with the stakes, whether that's pride, whether it's a paycheck, whether it's someone's last match, whether it's someone like Ben Askren, who just has to step onto the mat one more time, despite the fact that probably every doctor in the United States of America would advise him not to do it. He had to do it because that's his connection to this world. And his life wouldn't be complete no matter how successful he was in whatever he does next, because he will be. It wouldn't have been complete if he had not had that opportunity to step out on a Real American Freestyle mat. That's a movie. So as a producer, creator, writer, entrepreneur, just a guy that loves this stuff, I get to play in this sandbox with these characters and this reality and shape it in a way that makes it compelling for the viewer to watch. I love that. That is such a gift for me. It is.
And Eric, before you wrap up here, you've been super generous with your time. I got to ask you about this name. I asked Chad Bronstein about this, but now that this man is officially retired, any chance we can get Brock Lesnar in RAF?
Anything's possible. And I think with Brock, I don't want to give the impression I know Brock real well. I know Brock. We're friendly. Let's put it that way. But it's not like we call each other and chat wish each other Merry Christmas, stuff like that, right? But I know of Brock for obvious reasons, but he's a very unique individual. He's a loner. He just would prefer to be on his farm, hunting, maybe fishing, or on his tractor plowing a field. That's the highlight of his life. Spend time with his daughter, she's on a mission to win an Olympic gold medal as a shot putter. He retired from WWE so he could focus on that. And knowing how much he doesn't like the public, making public appearances, and it's not that he doesn't like people as much, he's just not comfortable in that environment. And I get that. For that reason, I would say probably not. But he's also a former wrestler.
Yeah.
And you know what that means. So, I mean, there might be a chance because amateur wrestling, collegiate wrestling was a big part of Brock's life and a big part of the reason why he was successful as he was, whether it be in the NFL as a walk-on for the Minnesota Vikings or a UFC champion or a multi-decade force of nature in WWE. It started with amateur wrestling.
And Eric, before we wrap up here and let you go, how can our viewers and listeners here at Heavy Sports and the Game Plan stay up to date with everything you're doing and follow you on social media?
Well, I spend most of my time on social media now that I'm fairly busy, busier than I think I've been since I was 40. But I'm on X, Twitter, take your pick. I call it Twix. That satisfies everybody. My handle is @ebischoff. I'm on Instagram. I don't post a lot there, but I do check it out because it's just a lot of fun stuff to watch and listen to and learn, actually, if you use it right. The Real Eric Bischoff on Instagram, and that's pretty much it. You can check me out my podcast. It's 83weeks.com or anywhere that you get your podcast. I do that once a week. Been doing that for about 7 or 8 years, so I'm having fun doing that. That show just talks a lot about, the nostalgia wrestling, the Monday Night War era, wrestling back in the 90s. So it's not a current, wrestling topic show, although we do touch on it, but not much.
Highly recommend that follow. And Eric, I greatly appreciate you sharing your time and coming on here to talk all about this. And I wish you all the best here with RAF.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for the invitation and look forward to doing it again soon.